Welcome home to St. Anne's. We want you to know that you're welcome to join us at 10 a.m. on Sundays. Please be sure to hit subscribe to receive our sermons. We can't wait to meet you. Hello, and again, just to say it because I haven't gotten to say it in so long. Alleluia, alleluia, the Lord is risen. You said the Lord is risen indeed. Alleluia, alleluia. Well, happy Easter. And I think we really need this Easter. We need it so desperately. And the first thing that I'm going to say to you is the sun always rises. Be it S-U-N or S-O-N. The sun always rises. And it's been a hard Lent, hasn't it? It's been the lentiest Lent that most of us have ever lented. And here we are on Easter morning, and we're still in quarantine. The COVID-19 is just now starting to really peak here in Missouri. It's mushroomed and it's really starting to peak here. And so we just heard word this week that schools will be canceled. Vacations are probably really all on hold. And here we are proclaiming, Alleluia, Alleluia, the Lord is risen. And sometimes it doesn't necessarily always feel like that, does it? And I think this is probably one of the most important Easters that I have ever experienced. And I hope it is for you too. And here's why. Easter has been commercialized. It's been really cleaned up, hasn't it? So there's little bunnies hopping around all the time. And there's this and there's that. And my husband just pointed out that I forgot to put my stole on, so I should get that before we do the Eucharist. So we've really cleaned Easter up, haven't we? And we've made it into something that Easter never really truly was. Oh, look at that. Now I have a stole. See? We're just all barely holding it together. We'll get that on later, so we have it at the Eucharist. And yet, we really get to reclaim Easter this year. We as Christians really get to say what Easter really truly was and what it is every year when we relive this time. And so let's go over the story again because I think it's really, really powerful. And even though we hear it every year and we hear it again and again and again, I think we've really cleaned it up. So here's what has happened. Brief overview. This is the Meg version. Brief overview. 1 week ago, Jesus entered Jerusalem, and we were all excited. We're like, woo, yay, Jesus! And then pretty soon we were like, boo, Jesus, kill him, kill him, kill him. And then we killed him. And we're like, bury him, cover him with a rock, make sure that those disciples don't pull him out and act like he rose from the dead, because ew. And so they are heartbroken. The disciples are completely crushed. Everything that they have committed to suddenly seems to be gone. And it's interesting that there's nobody there on Easter morning. Think about it. There's nobody there. Mary has gone to the tomb because the last thing that she can do for her best friend is to go and anoint the body some more and just be with him, even though he's dead. She can go and she can be with his body. And so that's what she's decided to do. And he's not there. He's not there. The last thing that she had of Jesus is gone. Gone. And what does she do? She's heartbroken. She has nothing left of Jesus. And so she runs and she tells the disciples, because guess what? The disciples aren't there. They're not there. They're holed up in a room somewhere, similar to many of us. They're hiding because there's this big scary thing going on out there. They've killed Jesus in the most horrific way possible at this time. This is an awful way to die. And they've just seen it happen. It was awful. And they are pretty sure that they're coming for them next. So it's only a matter of time before they too are caught and killed. And so they're hiding. They're all together by themselves in a room, huddled up together. And Mary bursts in the room and she's like, he's gone. His body is gone. I don't know where he is, but somebody stole his body. And so John being classic John. John, I love John. John's delightful. John likes to tell this story. He's always the beloved disciple, if you haven't noticed. It's always him. And so he tells this adorable story, which is so John, of how, well, Peter goes out running, and the beloved disciple, that's me, by the way. I'm the beloved one. He goes too, and they're running. And guess what? The beloved one gets there first because he's faster. Not only does Jesus love him better because he's the beloved one, but he's faster too. It's classic John. And so here we have this beautiful narrative, and John being very, very John in it. And so they go, and they realize that he's gone. And so they go back. They see that the wrappings are lying there, and they go back to the other disciples. They go back home, trying to figure out what has just happened here, because, whoa, this wasn't what we expected. But Mary's still there, because remember, they're all heartbroken, but Mary's really, truly heartbroken, because the last thing that she could do is gone. And so she's weeping, and she's heartbroken. And another beautiful part of the story, she hears this woman, she hears this man who she presumes to be the gardener. He's like, "Woman, what are you doing? Why are you crying?" And she's like, "Well, this." And the beautiful part of this story is that she doesn't recognize him. She doesn't know who he is until he says her name. And when he calls out to her and says, "Mary, it's me," she's like, "Oh my gosh, it's you." And I want us to reclaim this story because there are fewer than 10 people, which means that they have somehow managed to fall under COVID-19's quarantine rule. They are still under 10 people. Yay, good job, early Christians. We have managed to follow quarantine. Nobody's there. Nobody is there. And yet, Easter comes. Nobody has to be there to witness it, to send a Hallmark card, to put Easter baskets out. Nobody has to be there for God to show up. For Jesus to do what Jesus does, he does not need a huge church full of people. He doesn't need Hallmark cards and movies and lots of loud music or any of this brouhaha. He doesn't need that. God does not need those things. And we have come to believe that God does. We have come to believe that love means extravagance. We have come to believe that God needs ridiculous absurdity. But God doesn't. You and I sometimes like those things. We like to dress up in fancy things. We like to wear fancy things. We like to eat fancy things. We like to do all sorts of these fancy things. But that's us. That's our stuff. God doesn't need that. God doesn't need that. And guess what? Easter comes. The sun rises no matter what. No matter if we're all together in one room or if we are in a huge church full of incense and music, and whether or not there are Easter baskets full of candy and Easter egg hunts, the sun rises. The sun always rises. And we need to hear that because sometimes we forget. And sometimes we cover it up, we shellac it with all sorts of this other sugary, ridiculous stuff. So much so that we've forgotten the very core of the story. And the very core of the story is that Jesus rises. The sun rises. No matter what. And in the face of all this ridiculousness that people have come up with, and when that's all stripped away, the sun still rises. And I think Mary might always, well, I'll be honest, Mary Magdalene is probably always one of my favorites. But I think she might be one of our most important saints right now. And that's because she recognizes that in the midst of all this stuff being stripped away, the last thing that she has of her best friend is gone. And it's not until that last thing is gone that she realizes the sun has risen. We want you to know that you're welcome to join us at 10 a.m. on Sundays.
Oh, yeah.
Please be sure to hit subscribe to receive our sermons. We can't wait to meet you.